Into the sky we soar. Every day, aviator, let me show you more.
From takeoff to sun, hear those engines roar. Feel those rush, I'm the naked door. Love so hard, and just like a rain. Take me deep with the mission of me.
Every day, aviator, conquering the skies. After burning dreams in those spider jets we fly. Every day, aviator, reaching new heights. Soaring through the clouds on the starlit nights. Fasten your seatbelts, hold on tight. We'll chase the sun, break through the night.
From the hangar to the open blue, aim for twist and turn, I'll guide you through. Throttle up the ride, embrace the thrill. Every day, and just chill and little.
Every day, aviator, conquering the skies. After burner dreams in those fighter jets we fly. Every day, aviator, reaching new heights. Soaring through the clouds on the starlit nights. We live for the roar, we die for the speed. In this endless chase, it's adventure we need. Through floods over oceans, every path we lead. Every day, aviator, we were born to exceed. Every day, aviator, conquering the skies. After burner dreams in those fighter jets we fly. Every day, aviator, reaching new heights. Soaring through the clouds on the starlit nights.
Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video to add to the collection. This one's going to be a little different. This is not on any one particular aircraft or mod. I've seen a few posts about this over the last several months in some of the groups I'm in, and a lot of people are asking questions about helicopters and just wanting some help trying to fly them and understand them a little better. They are definitely more challenging for the most part. Some are not. Most of your Airbus helicopters are pretty straightforward because they're pretty much flown by fly-by-wire. But your other helicopters, such as the Robin, the Bells, okay, there's tons of them out there. The Huey, I mean, there's tons that are on the sim right now that do not have that built in. So you have to fly them by hand. So that's what I'm going to be covering this go round. I'm going to try to do just a generic overview of what you'd need to know to successfully fly a helicopter. I'm going to go ahead and get this started up here. I'm not really doing a tutorial on this because I think I've already done one on this helicopter, so I'm just going to go ahead and get her fired up here. And I'm going to go in this video, and if I can ever get this button pressed, oh, there we go. In this video, I am going to cover how you some of the rules for actually taking off in a helicopter. And because believe it or not, if you're at a regular airport and you're not parked at a helipad, then you actually have some rules to follow. It's actually, you don't just take off from wherever you're at. Right, that's getting calibrated. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to go over some buttons you do need assigned. So when it comes to the helicopters, you can use this under your same profile from what you've already got. You just want to assign a couple new things to some of your controllers, whatever it is you're using, joystick, whatever it may be. to what's called Set Helicopter Throttle Axis. So search for that and put that on some kind of slider, or some kind of twist knob or something that is not a button, something that can be moved up and down or twisted. I have a little rotor knob I use this on, because you're only going to use this just for very little time, but you do need it assigned to something. So assign something to that, and whatever button you use for trim for your aircraft, you also want to, I've just used the same button for this, but you want to assign something for decrease rotor longitudinal trim, and do the opposite button for that increase. And then the next one you want to do, for if you may or may not have a button assigned for this. I do. If you have one set for aileron, you can use it. If not, get you a couple other buttons for rotor lateral trim, decrease and increase respectively for the opposite side. You don't really have to have that or the previous one, but it really helps to keep a straight and steady flight, just in general, so you don't have to keep constant pressure on the joystick or whatever it is you're using. That way you can just more easily fly it, it's just like trimming out an airplane, except you're trimming out a helicopter, but its controls are named differently because they are technically different. Alright, so that's still acquiring, so I'm going to go ahead and let this start up while I wait for that, get my altimeter set. When it comes to taking off initially with a helicopter, you are going to have a similar force acting upon it, just like with a prop plane. If you notice, whenever you're taking off in prop planes, you have a tendency that the plane wants to pull to the right, unless you got a really crazy left or strong wind coming from the right. That's from the spinning motion of the propeller, and you have a very similar force acting upon a helicopter. It is also going to want to push you to the right, but instead of push, it's really a twist. So again, with the helicopter, you'll have to apply a left rudder to, which I think is technically called a cycle or something like that in a helicopter. I don't know all the technical terms for helicopters. So you'll have to do that though when you do take off. Alright, it looks like it's going pretty good. That first button we had assigned to the axis, the throttle axis. What you want to do is, after you get in, pretty much I think every helicopter in the sim does support it, like it has this, even most of your mods, because this is really how a helicopter actually creates lift. So technically you will apply full throttle on the ground, and then you technically change the collective to actually take off. That is, the collective is essentially your thrust in a helicopter. So with that axis knob, you just want to slowly turn it, and you can see right there my engine torque percent is going up. And you'll hear your blades start to wind up. So that is actually essentially your throttle. And for the most part, you're generally going to leave that all the way up. There's rare cases that you may not want it quite all the way up, but I'm not really going to get into that. So with that being said, we can now get ready to take off. You may have noticed I didn't actually assign a axis to the collective, because there is actually a collective axis in there, but I've never had to for some reason. It never acted weird, and it's always worked. I don't know how, but it does. So if you have some issues with it actually trying to want to get off the ground after you've already turned your throttle axis all the way up and got the RPMs going, then try assigning the collective axis to your normal throttle axis that you use for airplanes. So I'm at the Florida Tech parking lot, or well, it's shared parking lot, but I'm in front of the Florida Tech building here in Melbourne, and I'm going to take off on the runway because I'm actually not at a helipad, so I don't just take off from here. You actually will take off and follow the same rules as an airplane. You will actually taxi to the runway in just a hover mode or state, and then take off down the runway. And the same as for landing, coming back in. You come back in, enter the traffic pattern just like you would with the airplane, and come in, hover with your taxi, and taxi to your parking, land, shut down, you're good to go. If it's a helipad, it's a little different. You can kind of just go in and take off from those. So I'm going to take off on the runway 23, and I'm going to taxi over to get. So I'm going to know I need some left pressure, twist pressure, which is normally where your rudder is, right before I get ready to lift off the ground, because I know it's going to want to try to spin me some, and the winds ain't too bad right now, so it'll want to pull me. And with this helicopter, I know I need just a little bit of back pressure and to the right. Every helicopter is a little different with the way you might want to get it to hover, but also know I got a little winds from my back left at 8 knots, so I know I'm going to have to do that. So as soon as I lift off the ground, I'm going to go ahead and start taxiing over to the runway. Here we go. Got my pressure the way I want it, gently applying the collective. And it won't take much for most helicopters. Alright. And just swinging it around here. If you're taking off from a helipad, you actually want to take off, get into a steady hover, face the direction the wind is coming from, and then leave. Runway 5, not 23, I'm facing the opposite way. And just like with any real world rules, golly, can't talk, I would stop at the hold short point. Just trying to get into a nice little hover there and just gently set it down. And I would, be told I'm clear for takeoff. But I'm not using air traffic control right now or anything, so I'm just going to say I am cleared. A little too far over to the left. And I'm just going to get lined up with the runway. And apply a little more throttle. Collective. And I'm good to go. And at this point, I'm starting to gain airspeed. I'm at 30 knots right now. I'm going to start letting off that left pressure, that twist pressure I got, because as the airflow comes over the sides of the helicopter and down the tail, it will start to stay in line, just like a wind vane, basically. And you'll have to keep a little forward pressure still to keep it nose down to increase your airspeed. So what I'm going to do to have to take that pressure off is do my nose down trim, which we set earlier with the longitudinal trim. And just gently do that until you can feel you don't have to have any pressure applied to the stick, to whatever angle you want it to be at. Of course, once you get to the altitude you want, you may have to adjust it to a little more down or a little more up. And if you feel it twisting on you or wanting to rotate, turn to the left or right. Right now, I've got a little, it's wanting to go to the left, so I'm just going to bump my right over just a little bit. That one I said you didn't have to do, but it just helps keep a straight and steady flight. You usually don't take that much. Right now the wind is coming almost direct when it just shifted. It was coming directly behind me, now it's kind of to the right a little. And I'm pretty decent altitude right now, about 600 foot, so I'm just going to level off a little bit. I ain't trying to stay directly on it. And if you're flying in mountain areas or areas like this that transition from water to land, be careful. You'll have this effect in airplanes as well, but it can be more noticeable and challenging in helicopters as you'll get into those little updrafts or downdrafts of wind that may drastically alter your flight of the helicopter. It may produce a gusty environment, turbulent environment, so just be careful when coming over the tops of mountains, around valleys, stuff like that. I didn't really notice anything right there, so that's not too bad. And Microsoft Flight does incorporate that, so it is something to actually watch out for. So it's pretty good practice, in other words, when I'm saying to always keep your hand on the joystick so you can be prepared. Because it can be hard to recover from a stall in a helicopter. Just coming over here along the shores of the Indian Atlantic, and we might be actually in Satellite Beach is on up in front of us. We're in Indian Atlantic right now. Just following the beach line here. I'm in the yellow on my airspeed, which, as long as it's not a very gusty day, that is okay. You just never want to go past the never exceed mark, which is red. Yellow just means be careful. It's only rated to go that fast if it's pretty calm winds. And that is the way it actually is in real life. I'm not just saying that for the simulator, that is a real life statement. We'll start turning inland. We'll go over here to Merritt Island Airport. That's where we'll land at. It's a nice small little airport. It's just a couple minutes away. I should be heading right for it. I'm pretty sure it's right over here. Pretty nice day down in Florida. today. Slightly breezy, but not that bad. It's a pretty steady wind. Some other things to think about when you're flying a helicopter. I definitely don't have to worry about that right now, or this right now, but if you're flying in the mountains that are very high in elevation, just be careful with that, because make sure you know what the max ceiling is for the helicopter you're flying, because it may not be able to support its weight at a higher altitude, and because the air is less dense, so it's thinner, and therefore it cannot produce as much lift from the blades. And this same goes for airplanes as well. Just helicopters can be more prone to having that issue of not being able to support itself. I think this helicopter I'm flying goes to 14,000 feet. So there are some places that this could not fly, whereas there's other helicopters that can go higher than that. So just keep that in mind if you're flying around higher elevation mountainy areas. And you will notice, even at like 6, 7, and 8,000 feet, you'll notice a difference in the way it flies and handles, because it is thinner air, so it may take more collective to get it off the ground. It may not respond quite as fast as to what it would at closer to sea level, like I am now. Alright, so here we are coming up on the airport. So first you want to start leveling out to straight and reducing the throttle very slowly. You will want to adjust your trim as well a little bit. And you want to start going nose up just a little bit. That's going to slow your airspeed down. I am coming in a little high. Quite high, actually. Your glide slope should be around 7 to 12 degrees for a helicopter. But I'm still coming in at that same aiming point. Same aiming point. And I'm not actually going to touch down because I don't have wheels. If you're in a helicopter that has wheels, you most certainly can. But now I'm in the altitude I want, about 50 foot, 30 foot. And I'm just going to start letting it slow down, keeping that nose slightly up or level, depending on exactly what my speed is. And I'm going to exit the runway just like I would an aircraft or an airplane. And I'm going to taxi to wherever it is I want to park. And in this case, I'm just going to go right over here. I'm going to get over where I want to land at. I want to get into a steady hover, a controlled hover, and just gently let out of that collective. A hover is the hardest part to do in a helicopter. And there we go. Not the best landing I've ever had, but it was definitely a survivable landing, of course. And just go ahead and do that little twist knob, what we talked about earlier with that axis. Decrease that rotor, the throttle. And from there you can do whatever you want. You can leave it in this little low idle if you wish, and do whatever you need to. and you can throw that throttle back up and take back off, or you can go ahead and shut down the helicopter. I'm going to switch over to a helipad here in just a second and demonstrate that. Alright, here I am by NASA now, and somewhat sitting on a helipad. Not really lined up very well. And I will demonstrate how to take off from a helipad. So first, know where your wind is coming from, just like any time you're taking off. And in this case, it's coming from my 230 degrees, which is just from my right a little bit. I'm facing about 220 or so. Let me actually rotate real quick a little bit so I can demonstrate that better. Let's go ahead and get our engine running up. So now the wind's coming from like 4 o'clock, if you're looking at a clock, and in front of me is 12, so it's coming from about my 4 o'clock. So engine's at full throttle, and I'm going to repeat the same process. This time I know I've got a wind coming from my 4 o'clock, so I may have to use still left-west on the rudder, but I may have to pull back to the right a little bit. And I'm just going to go into a hover first. So gently applying collective. And now what I'm going to do is just let out on the rudder a little bit and just line up with the wind. And then I'm going to start flying more collective, and I'm going to take off into the wind. And the landing is the same way. You want to land into the wind, just like an airplane. Now that helipad might be kind of hard because it is turning around here kind of fast. To say why, because there's a big building in the way. So what I'm going to do instead is pretend one of these little circles over here in this area is one of the landing pads. So looking at where my wind is, my frames ain't the best right now. I don't know why, it's kind of odd. But anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and get turning into the wind here. Normally you would already be turned in pretty appropriately, way further out. Alright. Into the wind now. I'm going to just do my nose back to reduce my airspeed, just like I did before. Keeping aligned with the wind. I'm just going to let it gently land down. We have another player here in front of us. Looks like they're having a little fun time trying to... Oh goodness, what are they doing? Okay, anyway, back to flying helicopter. Staying in pointed into the wind and going down nice and slow. I didn't even look to see where one of the circles was, but going down. Oh yeah, there it is. Let's go over there to it. I wasn't really paying attention to where it was since it's not a helipad. But we're pretending it's a helipad, so let's actually land on it. So there we go. Hovering, reducing collective, and touchdown. And then again, you can do whatever you want from there, of course. So that's hopefully a decent idea of how to do a helicopter, fly a helicopter, some of the basics of its flight dynamics and stuff like that. Hopefully it was enjoyable. Learned something out of it and can fly a little bit better now with the helicopter, and it just takes a lot of practice, like anything that's more challenging. There isn't really one helicopter I recommend starting off with. If you have Microsoft Flight, I recommend doing the Bell first. It's a little larger than going to that smaller one, because it's way more responsive and nimble. So it might be a little more challenging to fly with. But if you start with that one, then you should be able to fly the other ones. I really like the Robins. If you're interested in purchasing an add-on helicopter, the Robin is probably one of my favorites. And then the Huey is right there with it. But before I go out, I'm going to throw in something extra here because I noticed it when I was just landing. This is a little kind of old school here, but this little icon here that is not at every airport, that's some, it actually means which way the traffic pattern is. It was more for old school, like I was just saying, for if you didn't have radio or anything like that. Just flying by visual aid, or dead reckoning as it's called. When you was, if you would approach an airport, you could see that if you flew over it and say, oh, that is in line with the runway and it's going out and to the left, because that is going to the left. So you know this is a left-handed traffic pattern here. If there's multiple runways, they will be in line and parallel with that runway on here, and it'll say which way to go. Obviously, if the end of it is going to the right, then it's a right-handed traffic pattern. Again, not all airports have that, just some of them. But there you go, a little bit of fun advice for the end. But hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe if you found it interesting. If you want some kind of other tutorial, just let me know. I will get it done. And hope you have a good day, and as always, safe flying.